In my last automation video, I showcased a v12 engine that I naively claimed to hold the power world record. Now, I wasn't wrong, but it was only the world record by a technicality. In automation, world records are separated by game versions, since each version can drastically change what the optimal strategies are. I was playing in LCV 4.3.5, and since my engine was the most powerful v12 in that specific version, I technically held the record. However, it wasn't the most powerful v12 anyone had ever made. Recently, Sky, a member of my Discord server, link in description, mentioned the YouTuber Trize and how he has a whole series of designing world record engines. In LCV 4.2.42, Trize managed to get a v12 that pumped out 12,250.7 horsepower. How much did mine make? 10,284.3 horsepower, which was almost 2,000 horsepower behind. Obviously, this would not do. There was one small problem, however, which was that I had no idea how to get 1 extra horsepower out of my engine, let alone 2,000. And this is where Sky came in and sent me this screenshot. 10,439.5 horsepower. This didn't beat Trice's insane record from the older version, but it beat my record. How did he do it? Actually, better question. How did he do it in 4 minutes? First of all, he swapped out the annoying titanium conrods from my engine with forged heavy conrods, which can handle way more torque. Of course, it's not just a simple swap. Forged heavy conrods can't handle nearly as much RPM stress as titanium conrods, so he also had to reduce the stroke of the engine down to 69.5 millimeters. This drop in displacement caused a drop in power, which he made up for by lowering the compression and turning the turbo boost way up. Taking this newly gained knowledge into account, I proceeded to whoop his booty with 11,261.6 horses. But he wasn't done. He immediately shot back with 11,345 horsepower. I struggled to beat this number for a while because there was just too much torque at the bottom end, so the pistons were breaking before they could even get into the higher rev ranges. After a while, he ended up giving me some advice. Little did he know the impact this advice would have. Twin turbo with twin scroll geometry seems to have less torque. Now, this information was confusing to me at first. Like, how could 2 turbos be better than 4? Well, in real life, 4 turbos would obviously be better. But automation, while realistic, isn't real life. It's a video game. And video games have glitches. Sky ended up sending me his engine config. Looking at his turbo settings, I was very confused. I knew he was using 2 turbos with twin scroll geometry, but what was even more confusing was the fact that he was using a 76mm turbine. In real life, the bigger a turbocharger's compressor and turbine are, the more power it will make at the top end of the rev range. So why was he using such a tiny turbine? As it turns out, in LCV 4.2, there was a glitch known as the wallbang, where the pressure ratio graph would hit the right side and suddenly shoot up well beyond where it would normally be. With this glitch, despite having the boost limit set to around 25 psi, the turbo would be making more than double that amount of boost. Even though this specific way to do the glitch was nerfed, Sky had found a way to do the exact same glitch that works in LCV 4.3. Armed with this new glitch, I immediately made an engine that broke the 12,000 horsepower barrier at 12,178.5. But I kept tuning, and before I knew it, I had demolished Trize's record with a casual 12,360.5 horsepower. At this point, since we had beaten the record, we stopped pushing for more. For about a day. And then, Sky sent me this. He had beaten my record by 1 horsepower, but not for long because then he improved it. And then he improved it again, and again, and again, and again, and again. At this point, he was less than 6 horsepower away from the milestone of 12,500 horsepower, which nobody else had come close to making with a V12 before in the history of automation. And then I came back and took the record even closer at a staggering 12,496 horsepower. But there was a problem. The pistons could not handle any more torque, and there was no way to make them handle any more torque. Since horsepower is proportional to torque times RPM, this meant there was only one other option to surpass 12,500 horsepower. We had to go to a higher RPM. Increasing the rev limit by only 100 RPM sounds easy, but since the engine we were working with was being pushed right to the limit, it required a complete rework to prevent the engine from blowing up. Once we had stopped the engine from blowing up, there was still the issue of how to make more power, and this was not going to be easy because of one problem. Turbo has failed due to pre-turbine pressure. This simple phrase would come to haunt us for the rest of this challenge. You would tweak one setting and the torque would peak too early, tweak another and you would lose 1,000 horsepower, tweak a third and the turbo blows up. Making glitched engines at their absolute limit is not a fun task, but after a lot of work, one of us pulled through. Sky had done it. He had broken the 12,500 horsepower barrier. Judging by his reaction, this was as big of a deal to him as it was to me. We had finally broken the last 100 horsepower barrier. At this point, both of us knew that 12,600 horsepower would be impossible. But even still, we had to keep going. We had just found the strategy for 9,400 RPM, so there was no reason to stop now. In fact, it was less than a minute before Sky had already bumped his engine up to 12,558.3 horsepower. And then Sky made a mistake. He shared his engine config with me. After receiving it, I immediately started tweaking. The engine config, that is. Pretty soon, I'd gotten all the way up to 12,580.4 horsepower. However, this was as far as I could go. I was almost maxing out the torque capacity of the pistons, and I could not find a tune that would make just slightly more power. Everything I did either lost power or blew up the engine. Unfortunately, while I was struggling, Sky was catching up. Eventually, he made the engine that stands as our current record today. How much should he beat me by? Drum roll, please. 0.4 horsepower. Yep, that's it. I am so very mad. But whether I like it or not, Sky is the new world record holder for the most powerful V12 in automation at 12,580.8 horsepower and 7,056.4 pound-feet of torque. I'll quickly go through the engine config, so if you want, you can copy it and try to beat it yourself. If you do, good fucking luck. But if, against all odds, you do manage to beat our record, join my Discord server, linked in the description, and be sure to rub it in our faces. Also, not to give any spoilers, but we may have beaten more than this one world record, so this video might just maybe become a series. If that interests you, then well, if I were you, then I would subscribe. I'll leave you today with a dyno run of this monstrosity.